Akimbo of Africa, Akimbo and the Baboons. This will be the 5th chapter lunchtime lesson. The baboons will be very upset, said Jen the next morning. Most of the time they can look after themselves, but leopards still take them. They go for the baboons on the edge of the troop, and it's over pretty quickly, I'm afraid. Akimbo nodded. Having been brought up on the game reserve, he knew that these things happened in nature, but he still found it sad to think of it. They were walking very quickly to a place near the hill where they would spend the day watching the baboons. Jen had explained that after the night's disturbances, the baboons would probably stay close to home. It would be a day or two, she thought, before they started foraging for food again. She was right. When they reached their destination, they could see the large baboons sitting on their rocks, while down below them the youngsters played some game of their own. They love playing, said Jen, as she set up her telescope under the shade of a tree. Look at those two over there. Akimbo and Kosi looked in the direction she was pointing. The two baboons, not much bigger than an ordinary cat, were pushing one another over the dust. One seized the other's tail and gave it a sharp tug, while the other spun around and tried to fend off his attacker with blows and nips. Then they struggled together in a bundle until another young baboon strolled across and distracted them. They have long friendships, Jen explained as she peered through the lens of her telescope, and they live in families. Just like us? Akimbo asked. Yes, Jen said, just like us, but a bit different. You see that group over there where the little ones are playing? I'm pretty sure that's a family, but it's mostly females and children. The males are sitting together over there. Do you see them? She beckoned the boys over to the telescope and invited them to look through it. Akimbo went first. He saw a group of large baboons sitting near a flat rock. They were peering out over the top of the grass as if keeping guard. They're on sensory duty, Jen explained. They'll be looking out for that leopard, or for any other threat for that matter. They've seen us, but I think they know that we're all right. Will they remember that we scared the leopard off? Asked Kosi. They might, said Jen. They're very intelligent creatures after all. But it's always difficult to tell what an animal is thinking. You mustn't imagine that they think the same way as we do. But you said they had friends, Akimbo pointed out. Yes, Jen said, they do. So I suppose they feel fondness for others. Look over there. That's how they show it. She pointed to a small group of baboons that were sitting near the playing youngsters. It was Kosi's turn with the telescope now, and he trained it on the baboons. And as he trained it on the baboons, he let out a little exclamation. She's combing her friend's hair, he said. Look, she's using her fingers to comb. That's called grooming, said Jen. They'll do that for hours and hours. They love it, and it's how baboons make friends for life. For the next few hours, the boys sat with Jen under the tree while she busied herself making notes in her notebook. They did not have much to do, but ever so often she asked them to count the number of baboons in a group while she wrote the results down. It was not very exciting for Akimbo and Kosi, but Jen explained that there was always a lot of watching in science and fun would come later. The fun always comes, she said. Believe me. And it did. Some hours later, when Akimbo thought that the baboons would do nothing that day, two of them suddenly detached themselves from the others and started to edge their way towards the small group of people under the tree. Don't frighten them, whispered Jen. Just let them come. The baboons inched forward and then stopped and sat down. Silently, they stared at the people, looking at them as if they were trying to make out what on earth these strange creatures could be doing under the tree. Then they took a few steps closer, very casually, as if they wanted to give the impression that they were just going for an afternoon stroll. Having come a little closer, they would sit down and stare again. Go away, hat or fly, whatever you are. After After a while, the two visiting baboons were very close. Now it was possible for Akimbo and Kosi to study their expressions more closely. This made the baboons open their eyes wide at them, as if they were making faces. Jen smiled at this. "They're trying to tell you something," she whispered to the boys. "They're trying to tell you that this is their place, and you should have asked first before you came here. That's what all that means." Then it happened, and it happened so quickly that neither Akimbo nor Kosi had time to stop it. They had been eating their lunch, which consisted of 2 large sandwiches Jen had made for them, when the 2 baboons had started to approach. The boys had put their sandwiches down on the grass so that they could finish them off later, or that's what they thought. The baboons had something quite different in mind. With a sudden whooping sound, the baboons dashed forward and snatched the sandwiches. Then, as quickly as they had darted in, they scampered off to a safe distance. Then they sat down, and watching the boys as they did so, they stuffed the half-eaten sandwiches into their mouths. "Our lunch!" wailed Akimbo indignantly. Jen laughed. "Sorry about that," she said, "but it's a lesson that I also had to learn when I first got to know these animals. They love to steal." "But it's not fair," said Kosi crossly. He still felt hungry, and the only food was back at the hut. The baboons think it's perfectly fair," said Jen. "They were hungry. They saw some sandwiches. It was as simple as that." Akimbo and Kosi looked at one another. Jen was right, and they both decided that the best thing to do was to laugh. After all, it had been rather funny, and the baboons looked very pleased with themselves. "All right then," called out Akimbo. "I hope you enjoyed that." The 2 baboons stared at them. Their mouths were still full of the boys' lunch, and so they did not say anything in reply. Akimbo turned to Jen. "Did you notice something about the smaller one?" he asked. Jen nodded. "Yes, I think I did. He was limping, wasn't he?" "Yes," said Akimbo. "It was his left back paw. It was really swollen." "Perhaps the leopard bit him," said Kosi, "or slashed him with her claws." "Maybe," said Jen, "but it hasn't made him any the less brave, has it?"